There we go. Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council special meeting. The council thanks you for being part of your city government. At special meetings, the council takes formal action on specific items and only discusses or takes action on specific items. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. This meeting is also being televised on Pasco PSC-TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and GoToWebinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. All right, and we will have an item for visitors to speak on other items not currently listed. That'll be later on the agenda. And this is the June 20th special meeting. All right, with that, I ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Campos?
Present.
Milne? I believe he's excused. Councilmember Roach? And I believe she'll be coming in shortly. Councilmember Serrano? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Present.
And Mayor Barajas?
Present.
Great. There's a quorum.
All right, great, thank you. And with that, will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by council members or the public, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. First item on our consent agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from the Pasco regular meeting and regular workshop held on June 6th and June 13th of 2022, respectively. And to approve claims in a total amount of $6,871,328.98. And to approve bad debt write-off for utility billing, ambulance, cemetery, general accounts, miscellaneous accounts, and municipal court, non-criminal, criminal, and parking accounts receivable in the total amount of $386,217.51, and of that amount authorize $84,603.38 to be turned over to collection. That's our consent agenda. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Campos. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. For a roll call, please.
Councilmember Serrano?
Yes.
Campos?
Yes.
Roach? Oh, she's not here. Maloney?
I am here.
Yay, thank you.
I just joined. Are we taking attendance or voting on something?
We were
Sorry,
doing...
Councilmember Roach, we were just doing the consent agenda. If you haven't joined us for that, then I'd ask you to please abstain from this vote.
Okay, sounds good.
Maloney?
Yes.
And Barajas?
Yes.
Great.
All right.
Passes unanimously.
Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item number 5, proclamations and acknowledgements. None listed this evening. And then, so I'll move over to item 6, visitors other than agenda items. This item is provided to allow citizens the opportunity to bring items to the attention of the City Council or to express an opinion on an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate or for the posing of questions with the expectation of an immediate response. Some questions require consideration by council over time and after a deliberative process with input from a number of different sources. And some questions are best directed to staff members who have access to specific information. Citizen comments will be normally limited to 3 minutes by the mayor, and those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments and or submit written information for the consideration by the council outside of formal meetings. With that, is there any member of the public that would like to speak on an item that is not later on in the agenda? Yes, ma'am. All right, if you guys speak your name for the record, I'd appreciate it. Can you push the
button.
There we go.
perfect, thank you.
Angela Zeiler.
Thank you.
So folks, I'm here to talk to you about the community involvement at the Tri-Cities Animal Shelter. During my 12-year tenure at the shelter, there was a daily average of 100 visitors. We had groups such as the Arc of Tri-Cities, 4-H programs, school field trips, retirement homes, and family outings. Hanford contractors and local businesses also used this as their annual volunteer hours at the facility. All we asked of volunteers at that time was to spend time with walking the dogs and playing with the cats. In those 12 years, we had less than 5 people injured doing so. The shelter was also a source utilized by diversion programs and community service options for juvenile and adults. Since November, the ability of the community to volunteer has significantly been reduced. The current administration has put such a restrictive process on volunteering in the name of safety, example, 5-hour online course for certification purposes, 6-month waiting list, and an application review. Many volunteers that have walked dogs over the last 15 years are being denied the ability to do so before going through the new process. And some have been waiting for over 5 months with no contact from staff following their certification and application. City of Pasco prides itself on community involvement. And I encourage you to make sure our community and visitors get back the ability once again see the shelter as a source of volunteer opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Is there any other member of the public that'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am. And if you could speak your name I appreciate it.
Good evening, my name is Christy Kessler.
Could you just push the button on the bottom there?
No.
Red light.
Base of the microphone. There you
Perfect.
go.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, my name's Christy Kessler, and I'm here to speak on the shelter again. We need to have a real conversation about the culture over there, you guys. I appreciate the people that went over and looked at things and took that very seriously. But you guys were all here, I think everybody that's sitting here tonight, and maybe some of the people that are on the other call, on May 9th, when the new executive director of both Benton Franklin Humane Society and Tri-City Animal Control gave us a glimpse of her true feelings about the shelter. At the 1 hour and 15 minute and 25-second mark, she says, with what almost sounds like disgust, folks believe that this place should be run like a sanctuary, end quote. As a community, isn't that exactly what we expect the shelter to be? A place for lost and neglected animals? She then goes on to say at the end of the day, it's a business and I run it like a business, end quote. In my opinion, this mindset is exactly why our shelter is in crisis on multiple levels, and we are once again hearing disturbing stories of neglect at our publicly funded nonprofit shelter. Do donors, animal lovers, and your constituents expect each of you and the shelter, management, and staff to be good stewards of the funds they've been entrusted with? Of course. The answer is always going to be yes. But with the shelter operational budget as it has been presented, there's a lot of fat that can be eliminated, and the funds can be moved to animal care to allow for quicker and more comprehensive care for these animals in needs. I have with me attachment E of the proposed contract for you. I'd like to have the council see what their understanding of the salaries for the executive director, officers, and supervisors are. Am I really seeing that the supervisor is almost making as much as an entry-level police officer? That I have got to be reading that wrong. Is the executive director's salary really $95,000 with $47,520 being paid by the cities collectively, and with Benton Franklin Humane Society paying the other half? I'd also like to leave a packet with you that includes reviews of Benton Franklin Humane Society from the public. A packet that highlights the ongoing phone issues, as well as an email from the shelter employee to Zach back in January that was discovered during a public records request that expressed concern about the welfare of the animals way back at that point. From the animal loving community, we appreciate your guys' commitment and thoughtful considerations on all things shelter related. We appreciate your time. May I bring this forward?
Thank you. Yes, please bring it to our clerk and she'll be able to distribute it to us. All right, any other member of the public like to speak tonight? Seeing no hands raised, I'll move on from this agenda item, and thank you for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us tonight. All right, we'll move on to item 7, reports from committees and or officers. So looking for verbal reports from council members. Anything that, Mr. Campos?
I'll go real quick. I had my Benton Franklin or Washington Good Roads Association meeting, which went really well. We had a presentation from WADOT, Todd Trepanier. He did a really great presentation, very thorough on regional efforts to provide more connectivity in the area. Something that I found was really interesting is there's going to be a lot of highway improvement over the next year. There was a directive to basically go over 1,327 lane miles of road to basically be addressed. I guess in years past they hadn't addressed all of it. Why this is kind of important is, again, there's the big move ahead Washington grant money that's coming out, and Representative Banky and Representative Mark Clicker were extremely disappointed that most of the funding for that stayed on the west side. So we had a really brief conversation about the opportunity for Ben Franklin Transit to maybe tap into that pot of monies, and they showed support, and they said that they were very supportive of trying to maintain that and not put that at risk. But outside of that, everyone in that Good Roads project was really proud of the effort that we're doing regionally, but also, Pasco, we've got a lot of stuff going on with the Lewis Street overpass and a couple of different ones. There's an interchange here. We talked a little bit about the possible connection from Road 76 to connect to Argent, so that was kind of neat. Just overall, again, everyone was really thrilled about that. That's it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Campos. Any other council members want to share any red reports from their boards and meetings and other events?
This is,
Go ahead, Councilwoman Roach.
thank you. I will be really brief, Mayor. This is Councilmember Roach, and just wanted to say that I attended last Thursday the Greater Columbia Accountability Communities of Health, also known as GCASH, and one of the main topics was one that we'll be hearing from, I think, later on this evening, but about the substance abuse or detox facility. And so just wanted to say that was discussed at that meeting, and I will give it up to you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Roach. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, I just wanted to share the festivities happening over the weekend with Juneteenth. I did attend Friday the Juneteenth Scholarship Pageant, and Queen Razan Osman from Richland was the one that, made Queen. But I also want to recognize the Little Sisters, is what they call them. Miss Juneteenth Junior Princess Ariana Randolph, for having sold the most tickets. So just want to, share that. Also Saturday, the extension of the Juneteenth celebration went over to Kurtzman Park, read the proclamation. Again, just a little bit of history. It's been an event in the city of Pasco that has gone over 40 years, one of the biggest on our side of the mountain. And it's happening here in Pasco. So again, just shared it a little bit, learned some of the culture. And it was a huge event. We had Pasco PD out there. Pasco Fire Department was out there. Obviously, our city staff, Parks and Rec was out there sharing information and with games for the kids. It was a beautiful family event. So looking forward to it next year. And happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers.
Thank you so much for that report, Mayor Barajas and Councilmember Roach. I will briefly share that last Tuesday, the Pasco Public Facility District Board held their monthly meeting. Their focus is on making sure they can establish the right path forward for them to move forward on aquatic facility as approved by the voters. So they're working on how to structure, making sure they have the right staff support and such. This is growing, and historically it's been supported by our city staff, and there's an agreement for them to do so. There's a reality that this is going to very quickly, a project of this magnitude is going to overwhelm the existing staff, and they'll need to, and the PFD needs to identify what resources they'll need and how to pay for that. So a lot of conversation about that, of what's coming up next. no, I don't think a lot of final decisions, but a lot of good hard work to lay the foundation are happening right now. All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, may I also add one more thing that I forgot to mention? And this is an invitation to all council and staff if they also want to attend, but I'm on the Visit Tri-Cities board, and I know that there will be a recognition for Michael Novakovich, who is leaving and going to Columbia Industries. And it does require an RSVP, but the event is on Wednesday, June 29th from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Convention Center. And so I can forward that on to the clerk to pass on to the rest of council.
Great, thank you very much, Councilmember Roach. All right, with that, I'll move on to item B, the General Fund Monthly Report. Standing in for Director Sigdahl.
Director Sigdahl plans to be online, but if not, I will be standing in for her. Okay, she is here.
Great. Director Sigdahl. Director Sigdahl, you may be on mute. All right. Well, rather than try to figure this out, I'd ask you please to go ahead and present the report.
Sounds good. Do I do that from here, or should I go to the podium? Okay. Okay. Well, good evening, council members, and both here and in the listening audience, Mayor Barajas. Tonight we do have. Yes. Sorry. It's really loud now. Tonight we'd have before you the General Fund Monthly Report for the as of the end of May 2022. And I don't know if I can, do I need to advance that, or can you do that, or do I just talk? Okay, I'm just going to tell you about it. I'm sorry. It's what you've seen before, but just for further along in the year. It covers the activity of the general fund, both revenues and expenses at a summary level. And the first part is focusing on revenues, the three revenues that are the primary revenues of the general fund: property taxes, sales taxes, and utility tax. There's as you can see on the front page, and I think you have it in your packets, there's a month-to-date comparison for permits, because of course permit revenue we accumulate, but then also that translates to more property tax typically. The total is less for as of May 2022 as compared to May 2021. Just because of the mix of the types of permits. But overall the change is just 4.1% lower in revenues, and we expect that we'll end the year well. And much of the changes in the commercial and industrial types of revenue, so that is good to see, as that translates into jobs most likely, and also sales tax revenue. And then as far
I'm
as sales
sorry,
tax,
Darcy, to put you on the spot, but I am on now.
well, that's okay.
But please keep going on, and,
Okay.
and I will jump in if I need to. Sorry.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. And then, of course, sales tax revenue, as I mentioned, it is robust this year. It was larger than we expected last year, and it continues to grow. We're not sure what that will look like as we go through the rest of the year in light of inflationary pressures. But right now, we think we'll end the year with about $20 million in sales tax revenues. And then utility tax, of course, is tied to utility tax or utility revenues across the city, both city utilities and also private utilities. And so that also is on track to meet our budgetary expectations. As of the end of May, we would expect 70% of the revenue to come in if it was flatlined, and that's not always true. But right now we're at 63%, and summer will make a difference, partially because of water sales, and then probably just also people being out and doing more things. Expense-wise, we're on track as well. Our going along with the revenue side, 70%, if it was spent equally throughout the year, is what we'd expect. And right now, we're at a spending rate of 67%. There is some variation in there because, of course, everything isn't straight lined, and we have capital outlays that are lower than budgeted, just because of the way the projects play out and work gets done, and then also debt is paid just at times during the year, not every month. But all in all the expenses are under budget and progressing well, and in line with what we'd expect. No bad surprises. And then capital projects is the next section, and we just have a highlight of some of the things that have been done this year, and are planned. Finally, the end result is that financial outlook for 2022 is good. It is in line with what the budget would lead us to expect, and I guess the only outlier is just the changes that are happening related to inflation, and so we'll keep track of that as we move through the rest of the year and report back to council. And then there's a couple other sections that are customarily on this report. The contracts over $100,000 and less than $300,000 are listed for your review. And we do also have the list of the ARPA projects that are anticipated and kind of the status of where those projects are at right now.
Excellent. Thank you very
That's
much for the summary of the report here.
Thank you.
I would note that on that financial outlook, I think it's important to notice that we expect to spend down some of our reserve. That's what the city should do from time to time. We don't just build the money for nothing. It's to target it for specific allocations and expenditures. And so what we're intending to have a little bit of a deficit and reduction in that fund reserve. It's for intentional uses, and in fact, it'll be smaller. It'll be a smaller reduction than we expect because of our strong sales revenue. Is that summarizing that pretty well?
Yep.
So excellent. Any questions for staff on the financial report? Right. Councilmember Campos.
Thrilling as always.
Excellent feedback. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will move on to item 8, hearings and council action on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. Item A, we have a public hearing for resolution adopting the 2023 to 2028 6-year transportation improvement plan. Director White.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. And I'll just introduce Jessica Bracken, our long-range planning coordinator. She'll introduce this item prior to opening tonight's public hearing.
Excellent, thank you.
Good evening again, and I'm back to talk about the 6-year transportation improvement plan. I wasn't planning to go through the presentation that I gave through previously again, but if there are any specific questions, we can go through that.
Just real quick, we do have a summary of some changes. Do you intend to go through those before you go through the presentation, or not go through the presentation? But do you want to cover those real quick first, in case they might answer any questions we have?
Sure. So we did prepare, based on some comments last time, a summary of changes of the projects that have existed beyond this year, that are not new this year, showing how costs have changed from what was presented on the tip last year to this year. I wasn't planning to go through them line by line. If there are specific questions, I can review them. Many, you can see, did not change or changed slightly. Some of them appear to have changed, but it's partially just because some of the scope is allocated for 2022, which is not included in the current 6-year tip. And there were some projects that did change quite a bit, but as these projects go, they're based off of what best information we have at the time of creating the TIP. They're not financially constrained, and they're also based on what resources we have available to create them at the time. So as projects become closer or move ahead, sometimes scope changes, information can change. What is decided that needs to be included in the project or not may change as well.
Excellent. All right. So do you like us just to ask any questions we have? Is that what would you like us to? There, Councilman Serrano.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think you kind of anticipated my question or real comment before we host the hearing or open it. I think it's important that the public understands that this is exactly as it's called, a plan, meaning it's subject to both change, funding, and scope and necessity.
Right.
I appreciate you kind of setting that table, and I think that's one of the things before we go through this process. It's very important that the public understands that what we're adopting is what we'd like to see happen over 6 years. It may happen, may change. I mean, as Councilman Maloney or Mayor Potem Maloney has already alluded to, we have changes even on what we saw a couple weeks ago. So again, thank you for kind of presupposing that and setting the table. That's all I have as a comment.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other council members? Mayor Barajas or Council Member Roach? I'm hearing none. All right. With that, I will open up a public hearing. Would any member of the public like to speak on this item here regarding the 6-year transportation improvement plan? Second call. Any members of the public to provide comments on the 6-year TIP? All right, third and final call. Any comments from the public on our 6-year transportation improvement plan? Hearing none, is there any that we've received via email or in any other form or fashion? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. All right, any additional comments or questions from council? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution 4194 adopting the 2023 to 2028 6-year transportation improvement program for the city of Pasco.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Campos. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. All right, with that, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. And so we have a 6-year TIP. Excited. All right, we'll move on to item number 9, ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings, none listed. Item 10, unfinished business, none listed. So move on to item 11, new business. So we got the 2021 Fire Department Performance Report. Chief Gear, do you want to provide some introductory comments?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As council may be aware, every year the fire department is required by RCW 35.103.010 to report to council on our performance of the previous year in certain metrics that are called out in the RCW specifically. However, we do take an opportunity to examine other metrics that we've established ourselves within the city and within the agency, and those are also included in the report. I think council had a copy of the report in their packet. I don't know if you had a chance to review it. It's pretty lengthy. Deputy Chief Dunbar is our Deputy Chief of Administration, and because of that, he gets the joy or saddled with the responsibility to put these performance metrics together and spends a lot of time through the year making sure our reporting is accurate so that when he goes to do these reports, they're as accurate as we hope we can make them be. So with that, Deputy Chief Dunbar will give you his presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Gear. Deputy Chief Dunbar.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Council, staff, thanks for the introduction, Chief Gear. I'll try to keep this short, probably not as short as my predecessor. I was hoping to drag it on a little bit longer for them, but that's good. The report is out there. We've done a lot of work. We've had a lot of exciting things go on this year. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of the highlights from this year. So with that, let's talk about the strategic plan. And if you notice, these are left over from the previous 2021 goals because that's the year that we're looking at. So I didn't update them to the new goals yet. However, if you look at the new goals for 2022, 2023, they're very similar, just at a higher level. So we're still looking at the same goals at our level to meet those requirements for what you guys have laid out for us. Department cohesion, community outreach, getting out there now, especially with some of the restrictions lifted, we can get out and do more community outreach, which we'll talk a little bit about. Operational readiness, we'll talk about several different things there that we're achieving and working through. Maintain that WSRB, the Washington Survey and Ratings Bureau, Class 3 rating. And are updating our 2016 master plan, which you'll hear about in a very short future. Once we get that all finished up, which is, this actually feeds into that. Professional development, succession planning is very important, those kind of things. So really, the strategic plan that we've implemented and been working along has supported all these aspects as we move forward. So council goals, those strategic plan plays right into that. So this is kind of where we're at. We're building on that quality of life. We're working on financial stability, especially to maintain with growth. We work very closely with finance to maintain and monitor our budget and plan for our capital facilities and other things as we move forward. Community safety, maintaining the rating, achieve our target fire response times, which is one of the main things that this report's supposed to report out to you guys. How are we hitting that? That's one of the things that I spend a lot of time making sure good data in, good data out, so we can actually track that and see where we need to improve things. And then working with our community identity, get out there and engage the community. We haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years, and it actually shows later in the report. So we're hoping to get to that later. All that feeds into our mission statement, which is to honorably protect and serve our community. So you've seen these pictures and images before. Those are some significant partners that we've teamed with. WSRB, we are very important to us. FEMA, we rely on that for a wide variety of information and grant opportunities. And of course, our dispatch center that I'm sure you'll hear about at some other point in the future with Chief Gear's work that he's doing up there. So what do we base our annual performance report on, or the pillars of excellence? We have those 5 pillars that hold up what we're trying to accomplish every year, in addition to our master and strategic plans that we're constantly reviewing to help us maintain and improve that WSRB rating and roll in those council goals. So we have those 5 pillars that we'll kind of briefly go through tonight as we move forward. Those things are basically what we need to do in order to deliver a high quality level of service to the citizens of Pasco, as well as those who are just passing through our city. One of the first ones is technical competence. You can see here there's a picture of one of our specialty teams working on a school bus. It actually takes extra training to do heavy rescue and many more hours to achieve what we need to do to have the competency and skills to deal with school buses, which are built like tanks, those kind of things. With our industrial stuff and all the growth that's coming, we have the technical rescue team that's tied in with our vehicle machinery team. All of that builds on it. Of course, we have our basis stuff there with the Ifsac certifications. Ifsac is the International Fire Service Accreditation College. Basically, it's the state's agreement that these are the job skills, knowledges, and abilities that you have to do to attain those different levels. And to achieve all 4 of those levels, firefighter 1, 2, officer 1, officer 2, takes about 700 to 800 hours of training and testing along the way. So we've done a very good job over the last 4 years. We're almost at 100% for both firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. With a couple of retirements, we bumped that up this year because we had some older members that just didn't get in on the Ifsac when it was coming through. So, and everything that we're doing now from the academy, when they come out and the new recruits come out of our academy, they come out with firefighter 2. So everybody's coming out. So we'll be at 100%. It's almost one of those, we don't even need to report on this anymore. The officer 1 and officer 2, those are your company officers. Those are the leaders of the department, the management, the supervision. We need to continue to do that. We also don't want everybody in the department being at that level either. So, but there's a lot of work and effort that goes into maintaining those, in addition to all the specialty teams like I mentioned. So that all ties together in what we're doing. So what does that mean? Well, this chart kind of shows how much we've improved our training by shift this year. Over the last couple of years with restrictions, we haven't been able to do some of the specialty team trainings. We were limited to training with just one single station because of the COVID restrictions. Well, now we've got that lifted. So in 2021, we were actually starting able to get multi-stations together. So you can see we've had a big jump in training over the last couple of years. We're back to where we were in 2016, which is 2 years before I got here, back up to that 304 hours per member. Doesn't sound like a lot, but as you'll see when we get into unit utilization and hours and all the responses and all the rest of the stuff that they have to be doing, that takes quite a bit of time. So we have a very dedicated staff that is working hard because they know that they have to be skilled in order to deliver the service to the city. UHU, unit hour utilization, this is basically how much of their shift are they busy on calls. This doesn't account for training, pub ed, downtime, exercise. This is just spending time on calls from the time they're dispatched to the time they're back in quarters. And the dark blue on the far right of everything is the key. You can see that trend is going up. We haven't reached the critical point yet. One of the things we have an agreement with the union and others is that when we get to 25% utilization, we'll start looking at other options and adding additional staff to take the load off some. We haven't got there yet, but I will tell you that we've been hitting that on a daily basis on 1 or 2 units per week for this year. So this chart I expect next year will be even worse than what it is this year. So another piece is you'll see that there's a couple of, there they go now. A couple of interesting things where there's less bars in some of them. That's because we put Station 83 and Station 84 in service this year. When we moved into Station 84, we relocated many apparatus from Station 82 down to Station 84. So trying to account for that and then measure it equitably across the year. What it's basically saying is we're busy and we're only going to get busier. So, and speaking of busy, this is a picture of one of our house fires earlier this year that we burned the attic off, but we saved everything inside. Everything got wet, and as a friend from Benton 2 out in West Benton City says, things can get undry, but they won't get unburned. So you can see the biggest chunk of our incident response is EMS. Actually, by the time you add up EMS and other EMS-related calls, which are it came in as an EMS call, but it was canceled, or it was a lift assist where we're going and just simply picking somebody up and helping them back into bed or into a chair, or they've fallen, something like that. It actually works out for last year of 79.8% of our calls is EMS related. So the other 20% is everything else that's why we got into the business. So one note, we did have a major increase in our call volume between 20 and 21. We went up 18.5% total. In Pasco alone, we actually had an almost 20% increase, 19.7% in Pasco. What's driving that? We're still looking at that and trying to figure it out ourselves. We know it's population driven, but I think there's more people calling on our services and along that line. So where are these incidents located? You can see on our heat map that a lot of them are located just south of the 82-395 interchange. That's one of the we have 2 retirement homes in there, and we spend quite a bit of time there. And of course, if you go back to 80% of the calls being EMS related, that's an EMS thing. That's where we're going to spend a lot of our time. If you notice, we moved Station 83 north of 182 up there by Road 68. You can see that the reason we did that was that's where the calls are happening. So we actually relocated that station up into the heart of the calls, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So, but we're kind of spread out through the city. West Pasco, down in the southwest portion of the city, still is not quite as busy, but they're getting busier. Another view of that same thing is we zone it out by station. So we have this is each one of those dots represents an incident. This is data right out of CAD. Some of the things we can do with some of their personnel, and so we can evaluate where we need to put stations and those kind of things. You can see we've got Station 85 already zoned out, so we can tell you already that in 2021 we had over 600 calls in that area. Well, you'll hear on our master plan that we should build one when we hit 500, so we're already behind on that. as the growth continues, it's only going to get worse. But by doing this and taking a look at it, we can kind of predict where we need to go and what we need to do, which ties back in with we have input on the traffic improvement plan. We need to have better roads so we can keep that in response time going. One of the things we also do is map it by what we call fire management zone, or FMZ. These are quarter section areas that are static, so they don't change. These ESZs change when we build stations. These FMZs don't, so we can compare year over year over year to see what our performance is. So green is we've hit our 6-minute travel time 90% of the time. Red is we're under 70%. And as you can see, from 2020 to 2021, we actually moved the red from the northwest down to the southwest portion of the city. That's due to the move of the station, which we moved on January 18th of 2021. Now, on one of the other pictures, you saw that a bulk of the calls are north of 182 by a ratio of about 3 to 1. So we're actually addressing some of our other issues at our higher call volume. Yes, it impacted all the rest of the stuff down below, but we're addressing that through Station 85 and planning. And actually, Station 85 will be right in the middle of that big red zone down there. And once we get that in service, which will take a little bit of time, that'll take care of that. By that time, we'll have other red areas as we grow out and do everything else. But again, that traffic improvement plan plays into how we can better respond everywhere. One of the big things, and we saw it actually today with our, we actually had a brush fire, and in the middle of that, we had a residential structure fire on top of a accident, on top of a couple of other medical calls. Those are all overlapping calls. And without the mutual aid agreements that we have in place, we would be stretched very thin and we would be even worse off than we are. You can see that as our call volume has gone up, so has our overlapping calls. So yes, I did have a comment from the deputy city manager when he looked at it. Almost 80% of our calls are happening at the same time. So there's very few calls that are actually happening when nobody's busy. So there's always an impact, and the more stations that are busy, the longer we have an impact, or the longer it takes for us to respond, because we have to use second due apparatus from stations that are farther away. So one of the things we looked at was how is our incidents per 1,000 residents doing? Well, we were pretty steady, 17, 18, and 19. 20, we saw a little bit of an increase, but in 21, we went way up. And of course, that's represented by that 20% increase just in Pasco. The overlapping, as you can see, the busier we get, that's a much steeper curve. So I'm kind of curious to see how things are going to go. We're approaching the end of the second quarter for 2022. I'm going to do some of the same analysis and see where we're at and see what we can do to address it or look at other options that we need to as we move forward. Summary, total response time, we continue to go up. The last 2 years we've gone up. We kind of hit a good point in 2019. We were down at 553. We've creeped up a little bit each year. And the reason because of that is overlapping calls. It takes longer for those next two apparatus to get into that second call. With that target is 480 seconds. That's driven by National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. And that's our goal. I don't know if we'll ever get there. To get there would cost a whole lot, and we've got to spend our money wisely. So yeah, we're creeping up, but it's not like we've seen a 20 or 30 second increase. It's a 6 second increase. So we're managing it, and that'll hopefully be addressed as we increase our staffing and other infrastructure as we move forward. Some of the other gee whiz kind of things, if you're going to have a heart attack in the Tri-Cities, we do pretty well. The Utstein etiology survival rates in that bottom right-hand corner. Nationally, if you fall over dead, you've got about a 20% chance of coming back. In Pasco, it doesn't sound great. You get a third of a chance. The trick about that statistic is it's very variable. There's lots of variables. Last year, we were much higher with that, almost 60% for our Utstein. So it varies widely based on where it is. But if you're going to do it, here's not a bad place to do it. And I think Councilman Campos and former Councilman Torres can talk to doing CPR and doing that when they went to Fire Ops 101 of how labor intensive that is. So to deal with some of that 80% of our call volume, we have the Pasco Resource Navigator. We've been trying to get 2 full staff. About the time we get people in, they take another job. Very competitive But over the last 3 years since we implemented it, we started in 2019 when we had 8 referrals. 2020, we had 58. Well, in 2021, we had 159. So we're still getting to those high utilizers. We're doing a lot of work. And you'll hear a little bit about some stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks of how we're going to address this a little bit better. This is going to help manage some of that call increase on the EMS side by taking those people who call 911 for everything and taking them out of that habit. So when we can concentrate on the true emergencies and then manage those individuals. So there's some real opportunity here, and there's a lot of work there too. Another gee whiz, you can see that our false alarms have gone down over the last 3 years. That's a lot of work between Troy Hendren and the building department working with us, letting him know when there's issues and addressing things as we get together. Our structure fires have reduced a little bit. It's kind of staying right around 30 a year. Cooking fires, and this is where the community risk reduction and firefighter Shear and some of his outreach efforts have been kind of curtailed over the last couple of years. We'll get back out there and getting into some of those and doing some public education that should affect some of those kind of things. You can see that this year the number of smoke alarms, we were still able to get into people's houses even with some of the COVID restrictions, but it was reduced a little bit. We're still working through it, and that's a great program because it gets us out there. We educate people. We have an opportunity. We even identify some people when we go into their house for the smoke alarms to refer them to the PRN and address things. So we can actually avoid that first 911 call or the 20 or 30 after that. Public satisfaction, I kind of mentioned that a little bit. You can see that in our latest survey, we took a little bit of a hit. I think it's because we haven't been out in front of the community doing some things. This is something that firefighter Shearer and I'll be looking at to see what we can do for public education, that community involvement to get that back up to where we were. So we're taking a look at that. So yeah, that is a concerning trend, and hopefully we can turn that back around like we did a couple of years ago. And with that, I'll entertain questions. This picture is our EMS officer group. The one in the middle is Captain Crowley. She just retired. Yeah, 24 years out the door, 6 years as the EMS officer. Captain Mortensen is standing next to her on this side of the picture. The bald guy, not the other bald, not the unbald guy. He's got big shoes to fill, but I have confidence that he has the desire and passion. Kind of sad to see her go, but she did well. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Deputy Chief Dunbar. That was a fantastic presentation. There's, of course, a massive amount of work that goes into and a lot of details that are available in our packet that, of course, you had to summarize, and I appreciate you doing so very effectively. Council, questions? Hi, Councilmember Serrano.
This is more a comment. I'm looking at it's page 18 and 19 of your report, and it talks about years of service. And it actually trends very high on the lesser year of service. And I recall a year or two ago noting, I thought it was very weighted on the back end, and I had a lot of concern, and I think council all agreed to it, that we had to do something about that. And I want to just read one sentence. It says, Pasco Fire has hired 21 people over the past 4 years, resulting in the tilt towards lower length of employment. The fact that we've been able to recruit and retain individuals throughout the pandemic, I think is a strong tribute to how great of a job you all, both the brass and the boots on the ground, are doing as an organization. So kudos to you for both being able to hire and retain individuals throughout this time. I mean, it's just awesome to see that people want to be here and they're staying here. And I wish we could take credit for that, but I know we can't. So thank you to you. Oh, and one other comment. As you mentioned goals, this is more for staff. I was looking back at our goals, and I still see it's that mishmash of 2021. If we get the new goals up at some point so I could actually read what our goals are in the back of council, I'd appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Councilmember Campos.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. Just real quick, the training hours, you hit on that, and your bar graph to the common guy, like don't quite understand it, but as somebody who's done a ride along with you guys, I understand every minute of downtime you guys have. They're on CBT, right? And then you guys squeeze them into training whenever you need to. As a matter of fact, I can have Pat here and vouch for me if you need anybody to run a Sawzall. I'm your guy when you're doing TRT. So
Fair enough.
and then to the hands-on, CPR training. That was again, can't say enough about the work that you guys do. And I saw that Lucas machine in action, and you had a whole crew trying to help a lady that had been coded, and it just really impressive to watch everybody work as a unit. And the resources that you guys have available is life-changing or potentially life-saving, and so we need to keep supporting you guys in everything you do.
Thank you, Councilmember Campos. Councilmember Roach or Mayor Barajas?
This is Mayor Barajas. Deputy Chief Dunbar, thank you so much for the presentation. Always very thorough, great information. Kudos to the preparation of it all. Definitely doing a lot of great work out there. And I also want to say congratulations on her retirement to to Michelle. Don't know her title anymore, so just retired now.
Retired, yeah.
But anyways, my congratulations go out to her. Very well deserved. Thank you again for the work.
Deputy Dunbar, this is Councilmember Roach, and just wanted to say that I think you all do a fabulous job in the fire department, and it shows, I believe, to myself and council. And so I guess the one thing I would say is let's really take a look at that last graph with the trend there and make sure the public knows how well our fire department serves our community, because I think that's just a gap in communicating the quality of service that you all provide for us.
Agreed. Yeah, we need to get out into the community and tell our story and because we are the community. So that's what we need to do, is get that engagement back together. And I think that'll help tremendously.
So thank you, Councilmember Roach, and I'll just end with one thing. Obviously I echo my fellow council members' comments. Every interaction that I hear about, every interaction I see, the quality of work, it speaks for itself. We truly do have a top-notch fire department, and obviously we very much want to continue to support that. I do have one question for you. And so we know that last year a huge reason for the volume of calls was COVID related, right? There's some portion of that we saw a 20% spike in calls, and I think I remember hearing last year during the peak of that our ambulances were very busy with people. How are we roughly? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. So far this year, how are we looking in terms of call volume? Are we still looking at comparable to last year, or are we kind of resetting where that's a bit of a blip up? How's that looking?
We're right now, as of today, and I kind of track that on a daily basis, we're 6% over where we were last year right now. So, but we're actually running about 20 to 22 calls a day, whereas last year we were just under 20. So that'll be a big increase. I mean, it'll probably end up being somewhere between 6 to 10% increase, which is still, that's a huge increase, because over the 5 to 10 year period, we've only gone up 5 to 6%. So to have a 20% and then follow that up by a 10%, that's huge. And it kind of shows on our staff where they're getting a little tired, but they know they need to do the job. So.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate the dedication. Disappointing to hear that we're not in a blip, and instead we're in an ongoing trend. So certainly, I know we'll be talking about that more come budget time, is to make sure that we have the resources available, so we have enough staff to be able to handle the needs of a growing city. So, all right, thank you very much. If there's no other comments or questions, very much appreciate the report, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you, appreciate it very much.
All right, I'll move on to item 11B. Cancellation of regular city council meeting scheduled for June 21st. I got Director Rackheis listed here. City Manager Zabel.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and good evening, council. So yeah, a little bit strange, I think. Cancel regular city council meeting scheduled for 6/21. What? And special meeting tonight, what's going on is a new holiday. And our read of our ordinance. So I think a few of us last week learned that you're never too old to learn something new. And let's say experience to learn something new. Anyway, Juneteenth obviously was adopted as a state and federal holiday. It was not a holiday, though, that the city adopted as a paid holiday or closed city offices. And so we honestly were not tracking it that way. And we got to talking about it late last week, realized our ordinance actually says legal holiday. Doesn't specify city holiday. We had some conversation with the city attorney's office, and the conclusion we reached was Juneteenth and probably a couple other federal holidays that fall on a Monday are recognized legal holidays, and we need to be bumping our meetings. We have a few more Monday nights during the year going forward. Columbus Day is a federal holiday. And then one I never knew, or maybe I forgot about it because it only comes around every 4 years, is Inauguration Day is actually a federal holiday. And when it falls January 20th, on an inauguration year, falls on Monday, that's actually a federal holiday. So we'll need to think about that going forward, bumping our meeting over a day, which is what our ordinance prescribes. So to kind of correct that tonight, we had a special meeting. And then our regular meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Not seeing a show of hands of folks that want to show up for another meeting tomorrow. And we didn't advertise it, so we couldn't have it anyway. So our recommendation would be to cancel the meeting for tomorrow night.
All right, thank you, City Manager Zabel. And yeah, so I if we're taking care of all the business we need to take care of right this special meeting, that sounds great to me. Any comments or questions from council? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Just, that sounds like rest of the city of Pasco staff is probably pretty pumped to hear legal's decision on that. I myself was talking with the city clerk about how I'm not technically a federal contractor, and I've had a lot of people today ask me if I went to work, and yes, I didn't have a choice. But no other comments. I'll move to cancel June 21st, 2022 regular council meeting.
All right, have you on motion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. And City Manager is able, so we'll be looking at whether we're being constrained by our PMC rather than by any state or other laws that and potentially considering adjusting otherwise. Is that a path forward that staff might recommend?
I think we have a good definition from legal on legal holidays. So I think we kind of have, Juneteenth and Columbus Day are days we'd move our city, and the rare occasion that June 20th on an inauguration year falls on a Monday. We'd move our council meetings to Tuesday on those nights.
All right. Thank you, City Manager. All right. With that, no other items in Section 11. Move on to Section 12, miscellaneous discussion. City Manager is able. Do you want to kick us off?
I had a few items. One, I did want to give council just a quick update on the Thunderbird Hotel demolition. So there's some activity you'll see there over the next couple of weeks. We have a hazardous abatement contractor in the building dealing with asbestos and a couple other contaminants we found in there. Nothing major, nothing more than we anticipated, and that'll probably take a couple weeks, and then we'll move on to a demolition phase. Mayor Pro Tem, you came up to me tonight and recognized our first utility box wrap. That's a project of the Arts and Culture Commission that's been in effect now for a couple of years. Sixth, I believe in Sylvester. And it's the first one of several to come this year. So we'll have, 4, maybe 5 more. And that was through a grant from STCU, yes. Spokane Teachers Credit Union, thank you. Anyway, so I know the committee's really excited to see that moving forward. And they have a number of other projects too. Did want to mention that applications for the open District 3 seat are coming in. We received a handful of them so far, and we'll continue to accept those per council's direction until 5 p.m. June 27th. So if there's folks out there listening and you live in District 3, it's online on the city webpage. And then I'll note, talked to council about this last week, but give you a formal notice of my retirement last Friday. I haven't brought myself to use the term resignation yet. I just call it notice of retirement. But so that's October 31st. So still plenty of time for goodbyes and long-winded speeches and things like that. In the meantime, there's my feeling. There's a lot of loose ends that I want to tie up before I leave, and I see a busy 4 months ahead. Although I'll say probably I haven't known a time where Pasco wasn't busy. So at least not during the time I've been here. Anyway, with that, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, City Manager Zabel, and certainly I think we're all sharpening our tools for a good roasting closer towards the towards your date where you'll be able to go enjoy more time with your family. So we'll spare you the speeches tonight, but know that we're all getting there. All right, any other comments from council? Oh, Councilman Campos.
Yeah, all right. I was primed and ready to go. Thanks, Pete, for mentioning council goals. I was looking at that. I was thinking of bringing it up right here at this point, and I was like, you know what? It's about time. But I wanted to just do a couple quick questions. So with the pending appointment of a new member to council, I kind of pulsed Mayor Barajas and Dave to see what some thoughts are. Just kind of want to throw it out to the rest of the city council on what a small kind of retreat with the new member to kind of break bread and kind of have a crash course, if you will, on getting them kind of inundated with the rest of us, right? I felt as a new appointee that our retreat we had was completely eye-opening and extremely beneficial. And so if you guys have any comments or questions or suggestions, I'd say pass them off to Dave and maybe we can facilitate something shortly after this individual is appointed, and nice to get to know them. And then I had a quick thing. It was just on the top of my head. I'd like a quick update on the dock, on the status of that. I know Zach put a lot of effort into getting a lot of paperwork going with FEMA. That's what kind of spurred it. I saw the symbol and I was like, just like a brief overview on how that project is going. And I think that's it from me.
If I can give a quick update, we literally had a meeting just as I think it was last Thursday with FEMA officials. We had 3 FEMA officials come over from the west side. They're all deployed from across the country, but I thought it was a very positive meeting. Certainly all the investment we have in it to date, the demolition and the emergency call out, those kind of things, all covered. Looks like we'll probably we need to go through a process. It's pretty extensive still with FEMA for an assessment and potential award of damages for the dock itself, and we'd be able to utilize those for building a new dock. So the upgrade to the dock would good news of that too is the upgrade of the dock wouldn't be to replace it'd be replaced with current building codes and accessibility and those kind of things. So be a little bit more dollars than what if we'd have replaced the original dock in the form that it was in. So we should know more probably within the next 2 to 3 months. By the time we finish our application, and then they have the opportunity to evaluate it and get it back to us.
Thank you, City Manager Zabel. Councilmember Serrano.
Thank you. If I read the news correctly, I'd like to congratulate the city manager's wife, Debbie, on her selection up in Toppenish. It's rare that you see 2 people of that caliber, and having gotten to know both you and Debbie, I guess to an extent our loss is Toppenish's gang. So, and I know that's not exactly a 1-for-1, but I think I'm sure she's one heck of a selection for that city. So, congratulations to her.
I will pass that on to her.
All right, Mayor Barajas or Councilmember Roach, is there any items for miscellaneous discussion from you?
No further comment from me. Thank you.
All right, I just have one item I'll bring up. the Association of Washington Cities conference, annual conference starts tomorrow down in Vancouver, Washington. I believe Mayor Barajas and myself, as well as City Manager Zabel and Deputy City Manager Lincoln, will be all down there for that conference. As part of that, again, I'm serving on the Legislative Priorities Committee for AWC. So our process so far, I don't think anyone would be surprised at what's important to us. It continues to be, how affordable, how the cost of housing and for housing affordability, response to the Blake decision, things like that. So it's pretty much our top priorities that we've seen over the last few years are still going to be top priorities. It looks like for AWC as well. So we're well aligned there. But again, I'd appreciate any feedback that the council has or the public has on things that they'd like me to share while I'm down there. I'll do my best to try to build a base of support for the things that Pasco needs. So if you have any comments or suggestions, please send them to Deputy City Manager Lincoln. I think is our point of contact for that. So please feel free to reach out to him, send him a quick email, and he'll be able to compile any comments for us or for me to help push. With that, I'll move on to item 13. We do have need for an executive session. The council will now meet in executive session to discuss two items: consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate purchase or lease if likelihood that disclosure will increase price per RCW 42.30.1101B, and discussion with legal counsel about current or potential litigation per RCW 42.30.1101I. We'll be in executive session for 15 minutes, which is until we'll do a 5-minute break on top of that, and we'll come back at 8:30, and that will be attended by our legal counsel, city manager, and
Police chief.
And the police chief. All right, with that, we will go into executive session now and re-adjourn when we're done. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, with that, we are back from executive session, and with no further items in front of us, I'll end the meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.